3 or 4 people in the laboratory. We normally had shifts of 12 hours. In my case, my shifts were always 14 hours, such that I was shifting from one shift to the other shift in 6 days. But we basically worked a lot of hours. It was only 1 week, and we wanted to do 76 experiments. Now, Buddy Dornberg goes back here to the flight deck, and we show a little bit how you eat. There's a little furnace where you can heat up things, but all the food is in little square containers, as you see here, made from plastic. And the food is freeze-dried. And close to the furnace, there's a little pin in which you can punch through the surface of those little containers and put some water in there. Let it swallow, and then depends on the food, you can just heat it up if you want. And then really American style, you have everything organized. You know, you have a whole tray in which you can put your little square things, and then you can eat it. Very important that food is sticky. You cannot afford yourself to eat dry rice or peanuts, because that would be a disaster. So everything needs to be really sticky to eat, otherwise it will float away and make a mess. Playing with fluids in space is really funny. I mean, this is orange juice, and Reiner had a special equipment, like you know, with a pressure ball, some air pressure which came out of this fork on a certain frequency, which you could adjust, and you could excite the surface of a sphere, and you will see that you could even excite it in some kind of a quadrupole mode, in which it just becomes a cube. So he adjusts the frequency just to get into the resonance, and here you see the resonance of the cube.
Wow.
To be more gentle with orange juice is also really funny. I mean, you just can watch it, you can look at it, you can just observe it or blow a little bit with it. Do it a little stronger. Or just touch your lips and eat it. This is coffee. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a collision between coffee and orange juice. Now you know maybe the story of Columbus, who said he put an axe straight up by hitting it or smashing it on the table. But in space you don't need that. You know, the axe stays up straight. One thing I realized working here on the Beagle is that you're kind of slow here to work, but in space you're also very slow because of the mind is continuously busy with all kinds of things. Here you see little plants that they grow in space, and they of course have difficulties to know where to grow to. These little plants, they still have light, but if you also grow them in the dark, it just become really chaotic, as you see here. Now here you see Steve Nagel and Jim Buckley. They want to make a little show off. Push-ups. Not difficult in space. And Jim wants to do it even with one hand. It's very hard to really imagine what you can do in space, you know, when you don't have the effects of gravity. But it's such a quiet place, and you can observe all kind of slow motions or very small forces. By the way, here you see a tether, a line, which is an absorptive tether, which was an experiment which I did for mooring at the space station. We also had a amateur radio on board, which we talked to several people on the ground. But as soon as you had contact with the person, it was only for 1 minute because you pass over so quickly. Here you see some pictures of Alaska. But then after 112 orbits and 7 days, we had to close up the laboratory and clean it up a little bit and switch off the lights, close the lid, and ready to go back. It's funny, you work for 1 week and you work your butt off, you work very hard, but there's nobody ever thinks about anything like a risk or whatever. But then before you go down, then things become a little nervous again. The space shuttle, after it gives a deep burn in which you slow down your speed, starts falling into the atmosphere, initially with a very red glow which you see around the shuttle. And that's when you just break your speed. Here you see the last turn of the space shuttle, which is at an altitude of about 30,000 kilometers, which is the normal cruising altitude of normal airplanes. But then the space shuttle falls like a brick, basically. It has a descent angle of 20 degrees. Keeps a speed of about 300 knots at final. And then at the last, at an altitude of 2,000 feet, 600 meters, it starts to go to a glide slope of 1.5 degrees. And start slowing down to about 200 knots at touchdown. We landed at the desert behind Los Angeles, the Mojave Desert. We were in flight number 23, so in those days we still were learning how to do things. We feel extremely heavy after 1 week weightlessness. It's a very weird feeling to feel the gravity of the Earth back again. The shuttle has a rollout which is not all that long. It's about 3,000 meters, so at a large airport you could land. Even at the airport of Schiphol you could have land. It's one of the emergency landing sites of the space shuttle. Well, after the standstill, you kind of unbuckle yourself, you stand up, and it's really very weird because you feel the Earth not at all at rest. You feel it as an acceleration. Here you see us coming down. Most of us hold the handrail because you're still a little bit unbalanced. Of course, everybody's excited that you're back. We were excited to be back. Well, that was the end of our flight movie.